Cimo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a video on the brand new Snowflower archetype debuting in Secret Slayers. This is the third and final archetype, the other two being the Adamantia as well as the Outlich, which I already did videos on, so if you want to check those out as well, feel free. But I always like looking at these deck building sets because we've had stuff like Sky Striker and Necros come out of these in the past, and since we get pretty much all the cards at once, it's kind of nice to just evaluate the archetype as a whole, kind of make some initial assumptions and see if the archetype has any competitive potential. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So the first one is a Snowflower Petal. So it is a level 1 water plant. All of these are water plants to my understanding. Level 1, 0 attack and defense. You can only use this card's name's first and second effects once per turn each. During your main phase, you can take one Snowflower monster from your deck except Petal and either add it to your hand or send it to your graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for this turn except plant monsters. So that's already really good. You have essentially a Rhoda for the deck. Now, the big downside here is that it does lock you into plants. So really, we're gonna have to figure out here, are there enough good plant monsters to kind of facilitate playing a deck like this, especially when we look at the archetype in totality. Second effect reads during your opponent's end phase, if you control no monsters or all monsters you control are plants, you can, and this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. So it's kind of like a Treeborn Frog that comes back during your opponent's end phase. It's nice though because as long as you have all plants, it'll still come back. So even if you have a board, you can continue to get this, and then during your next main phase, you can go ahead and start searching and use the Petal to start enabling all your plays. So pretty decent starter. It's also a level 1, so you can 1-for-1 it out. Overall, looking pretty good so far. Next up, we have Snowflower Sprite Prim. So it is, again, water plant effect, level 4, 800 attack, 1800 defense. You can only use each effect once per turn. If a monster or monsters you control is tributed, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. So plants have a lot of tribute-based synergy. Think of just, for instance, Lone Fire Blossom. This is probably something you just auto-include into this deck, but even if you tribute something that's not one of these Snowflower monsters, so if you have this in your hand and you normal Lone Fire, tribute to summon something else, this can summon out of your hand instantly and act as an extender, so that's pretty good. Second effect, you can target up to 2 plant monsters you control, increase their levels by 2 until the end of this turn. There are some Xyz for this archetype as well, so that's where that effect is going to come in handy. So overall, not bad. I think it's nice that you can tribute any monster to get this out onto the board. It sucks you can only do it like 1 per copy, like it's like a hard once per turn, but it's not bad. Next up, we have Snowflower Sprite Shikuran. It is a level 4, 1800, 800, again, a water plant. You can only use each effect once per turn. You can tribute this card from your hand or field, then target up to 2 plant monsters you control. Decrease their levels by 2 until the end of this turn. I really don't like that, like, if you're gonna have this on the field, you tribute it off the field, but you can also get rid of it from your hand, so it's not, like, as dead, I suppose. The second effect is during the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, because it was tributed and sent there this turn, you can special summon it, but banish it if it leaves the field. I think the biggest downside about this card is that it happens during the end phase, right? Like, I wish you could just tribute it from your hand, decrease the levels of things by 2, and then bring this back. I think that would give this card, like, so much more utility, but the fact you have to wait till the end phase, I mean, that's not the best. I guess you could look at it with some synergy with some other cards we're going to get to later on, hopefully, but it's, again, I think this is definitely probably the worst that we've seen thus far. Definitely a much slower card. Alright, so now we're getting into some level 6s here. This is Snowflower Sprite Peony. It is a level 6, 1000 attack, 2400 defense. Again, a water plant. You can only use each effect once per turn. You can tribute 1 plant monster, special summon this card from your hand. So that's already pretty good. If this card is normal or special summoned by a plant monster's effect, I would assume that includes itself because it is a plant, you can add 1 Snowflower spell or trap from your deck to your hand. So that seems pretty good. As long as you have a plant on the field, tribute, summon it, and then you get to add any Snowflower spell or trap. I think that seems pretty good. It's also a 6, so if you use, for instance, the level 4 here, up this to level 6, then you can make a rank 6, which I do believe they have as well. Let's go to the other one. So there is Snowflower Sprite Erica. So it is a 2400 attack, 1000 defense, level 6 Monarch stats. I don't know if that matters, but just something to note. You can only use each effect once per turn. When an attack is declared involving another one of your plant monsters, you can tribute this card from your hand or field. Your battling monster gains 1,000 attack and defense until the end of this turn. So it's kind of like an Alistair, the Invoker type of effect, which is interesting. The second effect is if a plant monster you control is tributed while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card in defense position, but banish it if it leaves the field. So what I'm wondering is, if you use the first effect to tribute Erica out of your hand, if you're able to just special summon it, because I mean, it's in the graveyard now. I'm not sure if that would work that way. That's interesting. Again, this is kind of one of the weirder cards. There is a potential for you to just immediately resurrect this, and that could be pretty good, but that's something that I'm not 100% sure about. I definitely think this is one of the weaker cards. I don't know if like battle like manipulation is that good if the card doesn't do really much else beside that. I guess it can be another body. You could dump it to the graveyard with the pedal, and then if you do some other tribute synergy, you can special summon it back, so I think that's fine, but again, it just depends if like the payoff is there to play that card. Next up, we have Snowflower Sprite Snowdrop. So it's a level 8, 1200 attack, 2600 defense. You can only use each effect once per turn. You can tribute one plant monster, special summon this card, and one other plant monster from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except plant monsters. That seems pretty good if you can do something like special summon this and the Snow Petal, just as an example. The Petal can add a card to your hand. Let's say you add like this, the level 6 up here. You can tribute off the Petal to summon the level 6, the 6 triggers. You can then add a Snowflower spell or trap to your hand, and then the second effect here, you can target one plant monster you control. The levels of all plant monsters you control become that target's level until the end of the turn. So in that play that I just illustrated, you can either make both of them 6s or 8s, because they do have a rank 6 and a rank 8, depending on what you're going for. So that seems like okay. This is definitely one of the better cards for sure. Let's go ahead and move on down here. Next up, we have Snowflower Sprite Heloborus. It's a level 8, 2600 attack, 1200 defense. Again, these are all water plants. You can only use each effect once per turn. When your opponent activates a monster effect that targets a monster you control, if you control a Snowflower monster, quick effect, you can tribute this card from your hand or field, so it's from the hand. That's pretty cool. Negate that effect. If this card is in your graveyard, you can tribute a plant monster, special summon this in defense position, but banish it if it leaves the field. Keep in mind, the banishing if it leaves the field is irrelevant if they are used as Xyz material, because then they're not technically on the field. They just go to the graveyard. Think like Salamangreat Spinny or different things like that. But overall, I think the protection is cool, and it's nice that if you're able to just tribute off a plant, you can bring this back. That's kind of neat for protection, but again, I definitely think it's one of the weaker cards. It's one of the stronger, weaker cards, but it's kind of like in the middle. Definitely, the Snowflower Sprite Snowdrop is way better. So now we have the rank 8, and this was actually the first card revealed to us. So this is Snow Saint Teardrop. So it is a rank 8 water plant, 2800 attack and defense, requires 2 level 8s, so it is generic. You can use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. You can detach a material, then target one monster on the field. Tribute it. This is a quick effect if this card has a plant monster as material. That effect is so powerful. Yes, it does target, but it's non-destructive removal, and the fact that you just tribute it off means that it's able to just get around so many different things. You know how like there's cards that send cards to the graveyard? This is kind of like in that same tier, although it does target. So I think that's probably like the biggest downside of this, but it is interactive removal. You're going to be able to summon this with ease because you were playing all the level 8s in here. I think that's a very strong effect. Second effect is kind of whatever. Each time a monster is tributed, this card gains 200 attack. For each monster tributed until the end of this turn, I guess like if it like kind of rotates back around to you, not only can you detach the other material underneath this and get rid of something else your opponent has, so if she sticks, that's even better, but then you could potentially pump her up to like maybe 4000 attack depending on how much tributing you do in your turn, and maybe get enough damage into OTK. So that might be what they're going for here. I think the first effect is the reason why you play this card, and I think that's a pretty good payoff. A lot of people think it's not that good because it targets, but it's still non-destructive removal. I think you're going to see non-destructive, or excuse me, you're going to see destructive protection a lot more than targeting protection. And then I think they actually released the rank 6 here a little bit earlier today, as a matter of fact. So this is the Snowflower Saint Kanzashi. So it is a rank 6, 2400 attack and defense, requires any 2 level 6s, so also generic. You can only use each effect once per turn. If a monster is tributed, you can detach an Xyz material from this card. Then target one monster in either graveyard, special summon that monster to your field, but its effects are negated, and it becomes a plant monster. I think that's pretty good since a lot lot of these cards revolve around needing to tribute plants specifically, so that's nice. It does negate the effects, but it's a nice way to just get cards back on your field. If a plant monster you control will be destroyed by an effect, you can tribute one plant monster you control or in your hand instead. So that's pretty neat. It's kind of like this, I don't want to call it like a Dingirsu protection effect, but it's like okay, like it's like fine, it offers some protection. I think you're going to be using this more for the graveyard recursion, if anything. It is a rank 6, as we saw, you know, the 4s can go up into 6s, you can downgrade the 8s to 6s, or you can just use the effect of the 8 to make multiple card 6s as long as you just have one on the field. So I think that's fine. Let's go ahead and go down here to the spell cards. So we have Stunning Snowflower. So this is a normal spell. You can only activate one card per turn. You can also activate this card by tributing one plant monster. So I think this is cool how it's like a modal effect. So you can either just activate it raw, or you can activate it and tribute a plant monster for cost. So the effect reads, add one Snowflower monster from your deck to your hand. Then, if you activated this card by tributing a monster, add one plant monster from your deck to your hand with a different name from the first monster, but the same original level. So again, I love this idea of like modal effects, or like if you do something, like let's say if you lose a resource, you're able to get something different for using that resource. I think that is such a cool design, and I wish that a lot more Yu-Gi-Oh cards took advantage of that. I think that would be a kind of interesting direction to see moving forward. But it's a rota for the deck, you can't really complain. And then if you also tribute, which kind of triggers the whole archetype, you get to also get another plant. It doesn't have to be a Snowflower, so that means you can search powerful stuff, like just any of the plants. And now, yeah, it's kind of weird because Lone Fire's like level 3, and none of the cards we've seen so far are level 3, but I mean, the Petal is like level 1, so you could able to search that and like tribute that and get like something like, let's say, Spore or Glow Up Bulb, assuming Bulb doesn't get banned in MR5, but you know, different things like that. I think there's some potential there. Next up is Swirling Snowflower. So it's a continuous spell. You can only use this card's name effect once per turn. If a Snowflower monster you control is tributed, you can make your opponent tribute one monster they control, their choice. This is a very powerful effect because it's a way, again, this is non-targeting, non-destructive removal. I think the issue here is that your opponent gets to choose, so if they have multiple monsters, they're just going to get rid of the non-threat. But I think it's cool that if you can clear one of their monsters, like let's say they have a big threat that you can't clear, then like in main phase 2, you can just drop this, use some sort of tribute effect, and then force them to tribute off that monster. Now, it doesn't banish, so it's going to trigger stuff in grave, but again, any sort of removal that's like non-traditional removal, like non-targeting, non-destructive, I think is really, really cool. And then secondly, once per turn to your opponent's end phase, if you control a face-up non-plant monster, destroy this card. The whole archetype is plant, and you're pretty much incentivized to play plants, so I don't think that's too big of a deal, but it definitely is a downside. And then wrapping it up, we have two traps. So the first is Silent Snowflower. So it's a normal trap card. You can only activate one card, or excuse me, you can only activate this card's name once per turn. You can also activate this by tributing a plant. So again, we're seeing like that modal effect where you get to pick how you want to use it. The first effect is special summon a Snowflower monster from your grave in defense position. Then, if you tributed a monster to activate this card, special summon one plant monster from your graveyard in defense position. So essentially, you get to like trade off something that's on your field for something else in your graveyard, and then this card's resurrecting two cards instead of just one. I think that is so cool. Again, with the tribute synergy, you might be able to trigger other stuff as well. I think that's just really, really neat. And then lastly, we have Snowflower Sheet, another normal trap card. You can only activate it once per turn, and it also can be activated by tributing a plant monster. Target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Its effects cannot be activated on the field for the rest of this turn. Then, if you tributed a monster to activate this, take control of that monster until the end phase, and if you do, it becomes a plant monster. So I think this is really cool, because what you can do is, you know, it's not like going to be negating effects, so anything that happens like on summon you can't negate, right? And that's probably one of the biggest downsides, but it's cool because if it's something that has like an ignition effect, you can use this to negate it just kind of for the first effect. But if you tribute something off, you could, for example, take control of that card, and then if you have like, let's say this other trap, then you can use the resurrection trap, tribute the monster you just took because it becomes a plant, and then special summon two of your monsters out of the graveyard using the monster you just stole with Snowflower Sheet. So the synergies there, I think that's really cool. And that wraps up all of these Snowflower cards. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of potential with this archetype. It definitely feels like there's something missing, and I can't put my finger on it, but like, I think this deck has a lot of really solid options. I think it has a really unique way of removal, and it has like searchers. It feels like there's something missing. I don't know if it just needs like, maybe it's too fair, maybe it doesn't do enough unfair things, maybe that's what it is, but like, there's definitely something missing. But I think just the way this archetype functions is really, really cool, and who knows, maybe we'll get more support for it in the future. I still think Adamantia, out of all of the 3 decks we've discussed so far from Secret Slayers, is probably going to be the most competitive, at least right out of the gate, but who knows, some broken support could make this deck really powerful. So guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about the Snowflowers. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video informative, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.